Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time, Gary, on having this conversation with me. I appreciate it a lot. The objective of this conversation for me is actually learn everything from you, as much as I can from you, from what you've done, from your trajectory. And I'm going to start with the first question for you. I know a lot of the people that are going to be watching this or that are watching this, they're entrepreneurs, business owners, decision makers. So if you had, let's start by if you had one advice, one last, only one advice that you can never give an advice to an entrepreneur again. This is the advice. What would be the advice you will give to anyone who has in his or her heart this dream of being an entrepreneur, a business owner, a decision maker?
I would say the one thing that stands out as most important to me is you are not doing this alone. You just simply cannot picture the entrepreneurial journey as a solo journey with helpers accompanying you somehow um, on the sidelines. The book is really about somebody learning that if she's going to really make this journey, it's not like climbing a mountain where it's just you and the ropes and you don't even have anybody behind you and you just go out there on your own and you climb some gigantic vertical rock face. That's what they put. There's the intrepid entrepreneur climbing this gigantic wall and you go, wow, isn't that great? They're going to die. Okay, that is not how you do it. And what you really need, if you want to climb a very high mountain, you need help and you need to draft internal people, external people. You need to assemble kind of a little village to help you in that ascent.
Gary, what was your first job?
Uh, I I spent most of my career with big corporate companies. I spent most of my career with companies like Exxon and Shell in the HR field. So I learned how to work for other people in school. I didn't really know how to work for myself. Didn't really dream of working for myself. I dreamed of having a corner office and a big 401k. That would be fun.
That your dream to be to be in the corporate world and like to climb the corporate ladder and then stay in an office forever and get retired? Was that your dream?
I never dreamed about retirement really, but I dreamed that I would be invited into the room where the decisions are made and I'd be part of the decision making for big corporations. I really had I kind of felt like entrepreneurial businesses were too small and really not of interest to me. So I studied the top of the Fortune 500 and went to work for the number one most profitable corporation in the world at the time. And I figured that's a big enough mountain to climb. I don't want to be CEO. I want to be an advisor to CEOs. And after a while, after about 18 years of doing that, I still thought it was a good way to go, but I had an opportunity to reshape myself. I essentially was between assignments, severance check and career counselor. And I decided I'm tired of working for other people. I'd like to do something on my own. And got dared into writing a book and then tried to figure out what to do with the book. So I built a company around the book. Next thing you know, I've got a software to go with the company, and the software is overtaking the value of our consulting process. And I'm running a software company. And because it was all my money in the middle of the table, essentially, it was not really what I'd been trained for. I really didn't know how to play poker like that. And at first, I was pretty good at it. Um, Intuitively, I could figure stuff out. A lot of the same things that made me successful in the big companies working for me. But at some point, it got a little bigger than I knew what to do with, and I needed help. And at first, I didn't know it, but eventually, by the time I needed it pretty bad.
So you've lived the Robin and the Batman. You've been both. What's easier, to be Robin or Batman? What's better? What was your experience being Robin? I want you to share with me what was your experience being Robin when you were working with these corporations and being an advisor and the things that you've learned. Being
You're,
Robin. Let's talk about being Robin first. Being this person at a corporation, having an opinion, but not really being the decision maker. How is that? Some people don't like to be that person, and I will, or some people love it. So tell me about what it's like to be that person, that it's the Robin, not Batman, not the person in front of, like, with all the weight of the response and the responsibility of the company, but only someone that it's advising. How was that for you?
I think the job of Robin is very highly dependent on the quality of Batman. And if you notice, they've had a lot of different Batmans over time in history. Some of them are a little more worthy of your devotion and admiration and fealty than others. There have been a couple of Batmans where you just kind of want to skip to the end of the film and be done with it. And in the same way, I had a few bosses that were more inspiring and really great to work for. It's a bit torturous when you work for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or has different values and doesn't want to. You're not going to change them. They're going to change you, or you're going to opt out and change yourself. So I found very few Batmans that I really wanted to devote my entire career to, um, and preferred to be my own Batman at some point, I guess.
And when you became Batman, which we don't know which one you were, but we're gonna believe you were one of those that we want to watch the full movie. We don't want to skip the movie at the middle of it.
One on TV with the pow.
Yeah. So, um, what was like for you to become Batman? How was your transition?
It was very satisfying in a number of ways, and it was way more satisfying when I started to figure out how to do it. The book, as you know, talks about a young woman that becomes Batman reluctantly. She didn't ask to be. It was her father's business. She ultimately gets put in a position of leadership, and then they keep moving her up the chain because she's successful and smart and hardworking, and she doubles the size of the company in short order. But at some point in time, she figures out she can't keep up with it doing things the way she's been doing them. And that's my story too. I could not continue to do all the major things myself, and I had to start letting go of more things and then having some system of keeping track of it all and making myself happy with that. And once you figure it out, it's a different game, but at some point in the economy of scale, you get to uh, a decision-making opportunity where you're either going to learn how to work through other people or you're going to break. You're going to go back. You're not going to be able to get to what your true potential is.
So, you've worked with a lot of CEOs in all your career, right? So for those who have never heard your name before and they're just watching us having this conversation today, what would you say? Who do you say Gary is? Who's Gary, right? What have you done? What would you like people to know about you today? I would like for you to introduce yourself to the people watching this video, this recording, this conversation.
I think I'm an advisor and an enabler of growth, and somebody who approaches growth from a very personal standpoint as well as a business standpoint. I think we do a pretty good job in school and elsewhere about teaching you the mechanics of the job, but we over time have tried to co-opt people and tell them that stay out of their personal life. don't get involved with your people at a deep level. Don't allow yourself to have a deep level. Stick with the job description and the organizational chart and our goals and objectives, and you'll be fine. And I think I've spent most of my career helping people understand that's not really how it works. We go to the market looking for employees, and people show up. And if you don't deal with the human element, you're not going to be successful. And if you don't deal with your own human element, you're not going to be successful or happy. And being happy is part of the deal too. So you've also got to figure out who you are. And I think I do a good job in helping people figure out what they're really on the planet for, how their job and role fits in with their lives and destiny. And most people aren't going to cure cancer, even if they have a very successful business, but they can use help figuring out what's important and how to perform their duties in a way that optimizes their success and helps their people grow along with them.
What do you think is what most companies are suffering today? If let's say right now you're a business doctor, okay, let's call it that way, and you can have a diagnosis of all the companies that you've worked with in the past, 25 years? How many years have you been on this field?
I left graduate school in 1981 and joined Exxon. So that's when my journey began. So 45 years ago, I guess. Yeah.
45 years. Wow.
18 of them working for big companies, and then the bulk of it after that working with smaller and entrepreneurial companies. And to answer the question, I know you're thinking, which should I prefer, working with the big companies or the small companies? The answer is the small companies. It's a lot easier to talk to somebody who runs a small business, who has their money in the middle of the table, and engage in a logical conversation with them. Because when you get in a big company, it's not logic that really wins the day, it's politics. How does changing something make me look in the eyes of my superiors, my board, or my president? Or that's how they think. That's their first filter. So you come in and you say, I've got a system, in my case, a performance management system that I talked about in my first book, that weighs a lot less than what you're used to and produces a lot more. And they'll sit there and go, if they're a big company, I'll be talking to HR and they'll go, okay, I got you. Yeah, I see that. Yours clearly looks better. Okay. So mine weighs less and produces more, and this one weighs more and produces less. And the HR people look at me, and a big convention full of people will say, what time is lunch? Well, that was a great talk, Gary. That was really, really, really wonderful. Wait a minute. I just taught you that what you're doing weighs a ton and produces very little, and you're going to go eat lunch? Meanwhile, if I talk to a smaller room of all CEOs and I teach them what you're doing weighs a lot, produces very little, they go, I noticed that and I hate that. Well, my system weighs a little and produces a lot. They'll go, I'll be damned. I think you're right. I want yours. And they'll go to their HR person and say, pay attention to this. This is what we're going to do. Here's a book, tells you why we're doing it. Here's training, go get training. And they look at it and say, yes, sir. I always did hate those things. I'll get on it right away, because they salute the flag and that's how they do things. And that's how you have to do things in a big company. So I'm not suggesting that an HR person, the top HR person of a multi-billion-dollar company, can just talk logically and persuade anybody. You can't. You've got to remember where you are. Remember that everything you say that's critical was invented by somebody who's probably still around somewhere and who might have their feelings hurt. And you got to tiptoe through that minefield Whereas in the smaller, more entrepreneurial company, whether it's a $5 million company or $50 million company, or if it's privately owned or privately run, it's really about what's the most expedient way to do something that will help us be successful and grow. Well, that's easy. Then we can agree on a strategy and go forward. So I prefer that versus the political speak. I know how to do that. It just drains me, and I don't enjoy it as much.
Very interesting. I've never thought about how a company with time it's gonna stop losing some sort of the soul and the heart and the love for the company and become more like a system that we all have to like everybody in the organization is just gonna follow. For those watching today, just for you to know, I had the pleasure of meeting Gary when launching Who's Got Your Back. And Who's Got Your Back, it's actually the story of this, I wouldn't say female entrepreneur, yes. And you have, when he told me he wrote this book with his daughter, for me was, I love it, right? I love the fact that you had this opportunity to discover your daughter's talents, writing talents. You guys work together on actually having this book, this baby together, because it's actually something that is very special, was created with your ideas, your mind. And when we were talking about the story, when the book was not even out, and he was like, okay, so it's the story and stars when this female founder hides in the office restroom because everybody's trying to find her so she can give everybody a solution, and she doesn't have those solutions. So she's crying because she has no idea what to do. And after me, that was a moment like I've been that woman. I probably didn't hide in the office restroom, but I've been in positions where as a CEO, you don't have the answers. And sometimes you feel really isolated and you feel like nobody can help you. So, do you want to tell me a little bit more about the book for those that haven't had the chance to listen, that the book is out, and so they can understand a little bit of the story and how, and again, like going back to your why writing this book. Why do you think this book is important for any entrepreneur out there to actually have it, or any HR people that are seeing their, their founders and their CEOs struggling and reminding them that they're not alone? And Who's Got Your Back, the title for me was, in that moment when we started talking, it was a little bit more than a year ago. Sometimes when you're like at the top of the chain, let's call it that way, they actually say it, entrepreneurship, it's a lonely road, right? They prepare you over and over again, and they say, be prepared to be alone. This is like a mantra that people tell you, like, get ready, you're gonna feel lonely, you're gonna be alone. But you actually have this book saying who's got your back, right? So tell me a little bit, tell us a little bit about the background, the why, all of it.
How about an origin story?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this happened to me about this time of year. We're talking in April, and we're right on the verge of tax time. I got this call from my accountant that I rented. She wasn't a full-time employee. She was somebody who worked about 3/4 time on a rental basis to me. And I called her, or she called me on a Friday and said, on Monday, we've got to pay our taxes. And you need to write a check for $96,000 to the federal government and $36,000 to the state government. Maybe a little less on state. And I remember hearing that going, that can't be. I mean, we didn't make that much money. It doesn't make any sense. She said, well, that's the way it is. I checked the numbers twice and you just have to get ready for it. I said, but I don't have $96,000 for the federal government and 30-some thousand dollars for the state. She says, well, you don't have to pay it all, but you can, you'll incur a penalty, and then the government will require you to pay over time. And anyway, the rest of it was just blah, 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 blah. And I hung up the phone, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I've completely miscalculated. I built this thing, it keeps growing and growing, but this doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm completely baffled by it. I thought maybe 16 grand for the federal government and 4 or 5 for the state at most. I thought this means my concept of the business and how money works. I always knew it wasn't my strength, but this means I don't know what I'm doing. So my wife's in this with me all the way up to here. We now have all our savings in the company. We have everything we got. The 401k money that I dreamed about in the big company is now shifted to my small company and keeping in business. And I remember I should probably have a conversation with my wife and tell her we've got this horrible problem, but basically it means we're out of business because she's going to say, I can't take it anymore. And I got to tell her, but I don't have to tell her today. Maybe I can tell her on Monday. And so I lived with the guilt and the pain and the anguish of not having anybody to talk to in my home. And I started thinking, oh, I borrowed a few bucks from my parents. Can I tell them? Yeah, but my dad, he's going to panic. He's not going to know what to do to advise me. It's going to make him sick. Can I talk to my neighbors? No, even the ones who work for big companies, they don't work for little companies. They're going to think I'm a moron anyway. I can't think of anybody in the world I can possibly talk to who could help me. And on Monday, I guess I'll get out the phone book and start looking for the people I got to pay a lot of money to. A big handshake and a big check will change hands when I get some consultant to come in and feast on my company. And I'm just thinking, I am so alone, and I'm living, I can't sleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm laying in my bed and I can't sleep. On Monday, just a few hours later, I get a call from my accountant and she goes, hey, gee, so sorry. Wanted to correct something I said on Friday. I said 96,000, it's really 16. And the other number, I think that the state may actually owe us a refund. I said, what happened? She says, oh, I forgot to add in something and I didn't take something else into consideration either. But anyway, that's the number. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, and I never want this to happen again. And in the book, there's the protagonist goes through a similar kind of problem. It's different, but similar. She's completely on her own and doesn't know what to do, but she's put together through luck and happenstance a team of people that loosely configured have her back from a number of key angles. And so what I've talked about in the book through story, we've just told the story. So this is a work of fiction, but I've seen it over and over and over again where the entrepreneur kind of gets trapped climbing that mountain all by themselves without really wondering what do you do if you get stuck somewhere. And it looks a little, little dicey just jumping from this finger grip to that finger grip over there. If you want to risk your life and you want to do that with everything you got and you live to tell about it, that'd be great. But I no longer wanted to risk my company on my own ignorance, and I knew there had to be a different way of approaching it. And the book's really about a highly recommended strategy for getting the kind of assistance you need way ahead of when you need it so that you can call somebody in the way the book teaches. You would have a number of people available to you to call who would instantly have the competency to look at that elementary level problem and go, there's something wrong here. And in 5 minutes, they would tell you, you missed something. They would never fall for what I fell for, and they would have my back and wouldn't charge me a dime. Would just be happy I called them and took care of them because we have a working relationship that has been established, again, under the rubric of the kind of system I talk about in the book.
I never, I remember you told me this origin story, but today hits different. So thank you so much for sharing it. And obviously writing a book, how was the process for you to write the book? Was it simple? Was it easy? Was it something in your heart? How did you decide to go for your second book, which is completely different from your first one?
For me, I'm very slow at writing. And the by the grace of God, somehow or another, when my daughter got wind that I was writing, she kind of said, I hear you're stuck. Would you like some help? And I said, I just can't. It's just taking too long. And next thing you know, we developed a process of working together where she would come in and I would tell her the things that I wanted to happen in the chapter, and I would give her anything I'd written, even sometimes dialogue that I imagined people happening, but big holes in there and not fully developed. But I would tell her, and she would take my notes and she would take what I told her, and she would then turn to her cell phone and she'd have that cell phone and it'd be going just like this. The thumbs would be flailing. And next thing you know, the next day she'd come in and she'd, you ready to hear your chapter? And I go, yeah. 24 hours later. Yeah, I got 2 chapters out of it. Let's see what you think. More often than not, when she'd read these things to me, I would cry, literally cry. And I cried because she took what I imagined and made it real. That's it. I mean, I'm listening to her talk going, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, some of it I told her, but she wove it all together and she has a real gift for writing dialogue. I don't have any particular experience or gift in dialogue. I wrote a really nice nonfiction book based on a bunch of research for, scholarly people, and they put in libraries as reference. That's how I know how to write. So getting into fiction was my way of going to where the entrepreneurs are. They don't have time to read big books like I wrote the first time. They might read a work of fiction, and if it taught them something, then they'd feel good about spending the time to read it. So anyway, when Carissa came on board, my constipation kind of evaporated, and she would be continuously waiting for me to get the next little part done. But as soon as my part was done, instantaneously, her part would be done. And we did very little. We had very little to overcorrect, or we had it professionally edited by a couple of people, and they didn't make many changes either. It was one of the smoothest collaborations I've ever experienced. And, when you get to the great exit interview in the sky and you got to talk about what you're really proud of and what you feel best about in your life, this will be one of them for me, the book I wrote with my daughter, because we love it. We love the characters. We love what they teach. It's unusual. The insights that are in it are not all obvious to people. And it acknowledges and tips the cap to people that I care about deeply, that are bold enough to put their money down and say, I got an idea and it's bigger than I can do for myself. I'm going to have to hire other people to help me. To me, that's the entrepreneur's dream. That's the American dream, to put your own money on the table and say, I'm betting I have a good idea. I'm betting other people will care, and I'm betting I can figure out how to make it profitable enough to keep doing it for a long time.
Yeah, so you were lucky to find an amazing Robin. Going
Yeah,
back to that. Going back to that.
Robin can make Batman look a lot smarter. Uh, so yeah, she's dying to do the next two. We've got two more in the chain where the same characters would evolve over time, but I've had a lot of things going on, so I don't want to start something that I can't finish quickly. But we dream of writing two more in a 3-box set. So I've I found a book that's kind of like that, or an author that I truly admire, and he ended up doing a 3-box set of similar kind of stories, but they were all unrelated. The 3 books in the box really had nothing in common except the author and the style of writing. The people involved and the characters involved didn't mature in age in the series of 3, and we kind of have. We'd like to see what happens to the characters next and what's the logical evolution of where they go in the first book, where do they go in the second book, and what would a third one look like. I think 3 is enough. I don't think we're going to write the Hardy Boys theory or Nancy Drew or something, but it's almost more of a television show than a movie, if you will.
Mm.
And I think of it
like a mini series.
yeah, exactly. A mini, that's perfect. Yes.
Like a mini series. And this is gonna be my last question for you. And to me, I think the time that we spent together in Utah, that I had the pleasure of like seeing you speak in front of hundreds of people, this conference. And your mission has been also teaching about performance evaluations. And the conversations we'd had, they helped me a lot to think about my team, my talent, and the time that I need to dedicate to them, and being the leader that I would like to have. So tell me about your experience and the things that you've done to shape better leaders in organizations.
I call the process catalytic coaching. Catalytic meaning speeding the pace of significant change. And coaching borrowed from sports, the notion of getting a group of people to work together in a way that allows them to win. So I want to win, and I want to win quickly, and I want everybody to do it together, and I want to build it around a coaching strategy and philosophy instead of one that is, I believe, built on a school teacher philosophy that somehow we've made the big companies have tried to convince us that the good bosses are the ones who fill out evaluations on all their people and don't give out too many high grades and turn their forms in on time. And that's a bunch of nonsense. That isn't who correlates with the better managers and leaders. Better managers are growing and developing their people. And so our coaching system has no grades or labels. It's just a much more robust conversation about where you've been, where you're going, how we can help you get there. It breaks the barrier, which is just made up anyway, between your personal ambitions and dreams in life and your business dreams, ambition in life, and puts them kind of together and tries to teach a boss how to be a careful steward of their direct reports' career and future. And what we've found is the companies that have figured out how to coach on a systematic basis have a big leg up on those that are doing everything they think they've been required to do, which is grade and label and fill out forms on people. The biggest companies in the world do it, and every company below them on the hierarchy seems to copy them. And we've been doing this stupid stuff for over 120 years. And there's no real end in sight because of the dominance of the paradigm. So catalytic coaching is a completely different approach. And I've been very pleased and proud to teach hundreds of companies to do it across the world. And I am very pleased with the impact we've had and hope that it continues beyond me and into the next generation.
Love it. I'm gonna cut this part when I said love it. Yeah. Let me go for this last question. I know the other one was last question, but I'm just gonna edit it. So I want to wrap up by you talking to me about the importance of building amazing teams. I want you to tell me your intake on hiring people and really caring about those people. And long-term basis. Like some people just hire people, not a culture fit. Like this hiring thing, I want you to share with me what it with your wow, 45 years of experience, what makes a team a good team outside the leader. So the leader can be that, person who can motivate, but what is it that in the extrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, like this corporation, so we're talking about small businesses, and small businesses, even though if they don't have like this HR department, they have one person whose role is actually managing people all the time. So
Yeah.
whether if that department is big and it has a lot of roles, or if it's small and they have two people who make those decisions. So talk to me, give me an advice for me and the people that are listening today. How do we build amazing teams? How do we build this World Cup winner kind of in sports team? What it makes an amazing team a great team in your experience?
Marcus Buckingham, in his book, The One Thing You Need to Know, says the difference between a great manager and a good manager is a great manager is playing chess, not checkers. And what he's essentially saying is that if you look at the players on the board, they're not all the same in chess. There are different kinds of people, but there are a lot more kinds of people than there are one, either a kinged chip or a non-king chip will allow you to play checkers. But chess is much more complicated. You got to get to know the strengths and capabilities of your various pieces and then play them together in harmony. It's much more complicated on the one hand, but way more powerful. So we believe when we talk about coaching that it's something you do on a cascaded basis from the top all the way down. We believe the way the CEO coaches the COO dramatically impacts the way the COO coaches the executives that report to him or her, and then vice versa. I also believe that this is an intensely personal thing, and a career, I think it's funny when I at the convention you attended, and anytime I meet a new group, I'll ask people, all right, just by a show of hands, how many people in here have a career? And you get kind of like, I guess I do. Okay, so what are they thinking? They're thinking, well, I'm not going to be president. I may do what I'm doing forever, and I like what I'm doing, so I don't want to have to defend it. Okay, that's cool, but you still have a career. A career is a job with a sense of future and some kind of history. And I believe that everybody benefits when you talk with your manager, boss, whatever you want to call them, when you trust them to talk about what you really care about, where you really hope you're going to end up. Many times it's not working for you. Their ultimate dream is to do something independent or to work for a different kind of company or to work for a nonprofit or be. The other day I talked to somebody who wanted to be affiliated with a sports team. They wanted to just be around that kind of environment. And you go, well, you'd still be doing accounting. That's okay. I'd be doing it for an organization that's got a different kind of mission. And okay, people have the strangest dreams. But if you can get them to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? The first person they're going to surprise is themselves because they don't know the answer the first time you ask them. They honestly don't know. They're just working. So when you wake them up and teach them, there's more available out there if you're interested. And if you're interested, you can at least tell me. We'll decide if we tell anybody else, whether my boss needs to know or anybody else in the system. But what if I could help you accomplish in your life what you want to do at the same time that, you do a good job for me? Meanwhile, we both have to do this in a way that allows us to win, because if we're not winning, nobody's employing anybody. You and I will be both looking for another job. But if we can win first, and then we can work it out to help you get to where you really ultimately want to be, I'd feel awful good about that, and I think you would too. And just for example, the other day I was looking at a posting on Facebook about a new book put out by one of my former marketing people. She'd always wanted to do it, and her dream was to write a book and to write a bunch of books. And ever since she's moved on with her career, she's been writing, and she's now published the first giant, big, fat, thick book. That's, you know, an alternative universe that she's created. And you can just see that if you were looking at her aura, it's expanded 5 times from when she was last writing copy for me to try to get people interested in my work. She was very good at what she did. You and I probably wouldn't have met had she still been around, but I'm very proud of her, and I'm very pleased that whether she sells 1 million copies or 15 copies, I don't care. She's scratched that itch. She's done something on that list of things to do that somebody up in the sky has asked her to get to, and she doesn't have to go to her grave one day going, I shoulda, woulda, coulda written a book, or I shoulda, woulda, coulda worked for that charity, or I shoulda, woulda. If somebody really wants to do something and they can explain why, and they're willing to work with me to leave the place better than they found it, train their successor, and to help select them in the first place, I'll usher them out the door with a hearty handshake and be their fan for life. And I think we can all do more of that. I think bosses who will do that for you, you line up to work for them. And I like creating cultures where there are more and more and more managers that figure that out, and the energy just kind of radiates from the whole company.
Thank you so much for your time, Gary. This was super helpful. Where can people find your book?
If you want a signed copy, you can go to our website, and I've got my daughter to sign a stack, and I've signed one too. So I'm happy to send you a book that way. The new one, anyway. The old one, I'm probably not going to do that. Either one of them, Amazon's probably my first place to turn. We always price everything the way Amazon does because they work it out with the publisher, whatever they think is best. But you can get it on Amazon. If you look for Gary Markle, I go by Gary, but Gerald is the cool big name I was given that I was embarrassed of when I was younger. But now that I'm an author, I'm pleased to have a fancy name.
Yeah, so thank you. So you said Amazon. They can find you also on LinkedIn. They can find you. If someone wants to work with you, any company who will listen to this conversation, how can they find you? Can they email you? What's the best way to approach you?
Sure, you can go to our website at catalyticcoaching.com, which you helped us modernize and make interesting. And I think that's probably the fastest way to learn more about it. If you want to learn more about our book, we've got a web page on that as well. Maybe we can include it in the feed here.
Yeah. Who's got your back? Thebook.com.
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And I really enjoyed this conversation, even though we've had so many different conversations over the last couple of months, many months. This was very different. I've learned a lot. It's good sometimes to remember, like, there are things that we know in theory, but in practice, right? Sometimes we just need these types of conversations that someone reminds us, a mentor, a book, to keep the difficult but not impossible entrepreneurial journey. So thank you, Gary. Thanks for everybody for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Keren.